Good to go? Okay. Okay, you all set? Okay. This is not a drill. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the 108th Annual General Meeting of the Corporation of Scouts Canada. And a big welcome not only to everybody who's here in Montreal, but also to the people who are following along online. It's great to have such a good turnout, and I know it's a significant number following us on the internet as well. Before we jump into proceedings, I wanted to take a moment and say a big thank you. There's a huge amount of work that goes into this, from volunteers, from staff, and we should just pause and reflect. And a couple of names in particular, the risk of calling out a couple of names is we miss people, but there are some who've done sterling work on this. Sarah, who quarterbacks, I think everything. So just massive effort, and thank you, Sarah. David and team with the facilities and the technology. Laura Jarvis, our Chief Elections Officer. Thank you, Laura. Laura's work starts far in advance of the AGM to begin to pull all this together. And we're joined as well with returning officers from our local council, Parker English, George Craigie, and Robert Smith. Guys, are you in the room? Great. Welcome. Thank you very much. And I want to say a big thank you to Abby as well, who I thought did a sterling job on the financials and did it with style and eloquence for a topic that can sometimes be quite dry. So thank you very much for that. Again, this year again, we'll be using the electronic voting devices for those in the room. So hopefully everybody has one of the little widgets. If you don't, please raise your hand and we will aim to rectify that. When the time comes for a vote, I'll put the motion. I'll ask for somebody, a voting member, to move to support the motion. I'll ask for somebody to second. If you do that, please can you call out your name and council loudly so we can capture that for the minutes. I'll then call the motion, which means we'll vote. And to vote, please press A for yes or B for no. There'll be a short delay while we tally the votes, and that's because there's a slight lag online, and then the results will come up on the screen there. But as I say, any problems, please just raise your hands, and we will get you sorted with the returning officers. Please don't take the voting device home. Tempting, I know, but please do return them. They will not work your TV at home. That's right. And just because we're using voting devices, we won't need to have a ballot or a motion to destroy the ballots because there are no paper versions. So with that said, let's get underway, and I'm going to invite John Estrella, our National Commissioner, to come up for the invocation and gone home.
Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. I'm going to read now the list of names of those who have gone before us. Sharon O'Carroll, retired staff member at the COSC office. Scott Champagne, Northern Ontario Council. Chris Green, Cascadia Council. Grace Peerless, Cascadia Council. Louise Ayon, Quebec Council. Louise Perouse, Quebec Council. Roy Thompson, Northern Lights Council. Donald H. Slingerland, Battlefields Council. Warren Law, former Quebec Council President. Alexander William Bartlett, Quebec Council, and several scouters from Northern Lights Council. Paul Schlag, Derek Jeffrey Arscott, Clark Edmund Gould, Mary Marion Gerritsen, Russell McDougall, Kenneth Glover, Adeline Way, Alfred Stockwell from Battlefields Council, Ernest Kaufner from Northern Lights Council, and several scouters from Battlefields Council, Linda North, John Rudy, Bob Leroux, Doug Buchan, William Netherby, Gordon Bartlett, Thomas Harold Inglis, Don Bettle, Annie Mary Smith, Leonard Smith, Sylvia Fast, Christopher Thorne, Michael Morgan, and from Shining Waters Council, James Nuttall, Richard Harris, Lil Fulford, Henry Paliga, John Trudeau, Jennifer Cole from Pacific Coast Council, and last but not the least, Major General Herbert Pitts, retired. He was our past president and national and international commissioner. After college and during his military life, Herb again joined Scouts Canada and became involved in the Shining Waters region in central Ontario. In 1981, he was appointed treasurer of the National Council. Then, as vice president, president, and past president, international commissioner, and then a 5-year stint as national commissioner from 1992 to 97, before he retired in Victoria in 1998. In addition to those 17 years of challenging and time-consuming roles on the executive committee, Herb also held major senior roles in 4 World Jamborees and 3 Canadian Jamborees. His major long-lasting scouting accomplishments were twofold. Firstly, in 1989, Scouts Canada agreed to enable girls to join an all-boys organization in a few groups. Although common in Europe, it was untried in North America. In 1995, during Herb's term as National Commissioner, Scouts Canada adopted co-educational scouting within any group that so wished, leaving the decision up to the local sponsor and leadership team. Girls now account for about 16% of our Canadian youth membership. Secondly, while in his position as National Commissioner, Herb concluded that young people needed to be fully involved in the decision-making at the national level. And you heard that discussed at the sessions this morning. He faced major opposition, but forged ahead anyway because he believed that it was the right thing to do. His leadership resulted in a series of national youth forums, starting in 1993, and ultimately in the establishment of a National Youth Committee with representation from across the country. Herb was awarded the Silver Wolf and Medal of Merit by Scouts Canada, the Silver World Award by the Boy Scouts of America, and the World Brotherhood Medal by the Boy Scouts of Korea. He was a true scout. He was a man of integrity, humble, genuine, dedicated, and committed to each task. He was always interested in how you were and not how he was. He definitely strived to leave our world a better place. His legacy is without doubt profound.
Thank you, John. I'll now ask Andrew to share any special correspondence and any regrets.
Mr. Chair, there's no special correspondence to report to the members. I do bring regrets from Steve Kent, the chair of the National Nominating Committee, as well as from Andrew Molson, David Hustis, Craig Kielberger, and Dale Hooper, honorary officers of Scouts Canada.
Thank you. And can you take us through the approval of the minutes from the last annual general meeting?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. I would like to move that the minutes of the 107th meeting of the Corporation of Scouts Canada, held on November 18th, 2017, as circulated, be approved.
Thank you. Can I have someone to second the motion, please? David Chesney from Northern Ontario, thank you. So I'll call the motion. We'll now vote. You can turn on the device by pressing the silver button. It should register, and then A for yes and B for no. any particular issues with the devices, just raise your hand and someone will come. Okay. Very good. We'll just give a moment to tally those votes. Done. And declare the motion carried. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on. I'll now ask Robert Craddock, member of the Board of Governors, to come up and share a safety moment. Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For a safety moment, I'd like to teach you a game. And the game has its roots either in the motto of Scouts, be prepared, or is the plan element of our plan, do, review cycle. The name of the game is What Would I Do If? The outcome of playing this game increases your own situational awareness, and it's an important element in risk management, both for you and that you can teach. The game goes like this. As you're walking down a street, ask yourself, what would I do if? What would I do if that bus spun out on the ice and started coming across the sidewalk at me and I had 2 seconds to do something? What would I do if the lights went off in this hotel and the room suddenly filled with smoke? It increases your situational awareness, and it can be a very fun thing to do with your youth. What would you do if you're walking down the street and a huge herd of elephants comes down and you have to do something? It gets them thinking about their own safety and risk. So, think about it from time to time. What would you do if? Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Robert. Okay. So, next on the agenda is the report from the Board of Governors, which I'm pleased to share this year. I thought I'd start off with a recap on what is the board, who's on the board, and what is the role of our Board of Governors. The board is the senior volunteer body of Scouts Canada, and indeed the senior governing body for our organization. It has 3 primary roles as I see it. First, to ensure that we have the right leadership in place at a national level, and that means confirming that the national key 3 are in their role and doing a great job. Secondly, with the key 3, the national key 3, it's the board's role to set the strategic direction for Scouts Canada. And then thirdly, it's the board's role to ensure we have a system of policies and controls and risk management in place to make sure that we're meeting our legal, regulatory, and societal obligations. And we see that come to life first and foremost through the BP&P, and then through things like the external audit that we heard about today. So 3 broad roles for the Board of Governors. So who's on the board? Well, there's 16 members. 3 of them are the national key 3, and we're going to hear a little bit more about the key 3 today. And then there's 13 elected members. And among the elected members, the majority, most, are current or former section scouters who are involved in scouting beyond their activities on the Board of Governors. We have regional representation, literally from coast to coast to coast, with board members in Vancouver, Yellowknife, and St. John's. And we have youth representation as well, with 3 youth members, our National Youth Commissioner and 2 elected youth members who play a full role on that board. This year, the board gave particular direction to the nominating committee when we looked at the new members who will be coming on board, because there were a couple of things that we wanted to ensure we saw in the slate of candidates. And you'll hear shortly from Doug Reed, who will take us through the report from the nominating committee. But in particular, the board wanted to see more diversity and special skills, specific skills. On the diversity front, I think the evidence and the literature is clear, and our own experience shows us that diverse teams, any team, diverse teams make better decisions and function much more strongly as a group. And so I'm delighted that this year, the board will be 50-50 male-female for the first time in our organization's history. I think as Canada's leading youth organization, it's imperative that we represent Canada as well as our own membership. I'm quite delighted with the work of the nominating committee to get us to that point. Secondly, we asked the nominating committee for some specific skills. So as well as that solid scouting experience, we asked the committee to help us find people who have key skill sets. Finance, we heard from Abby earlier about the importance of that role. But also this time, new skills around asset management and experience with other community organizations. And if you've looked at the bios of the nominated candidates, you'll see that we have those. So I think we are excellently placed to continue the work of the board. Moving on from what the board does and who is on the board, I wanted to report on the core objectives and the strategic imperatives that the board has set this year. Our focus is very firmly on furthering Scouts Canada's mission to develop well-rounded youth better prepared for success in the world. And with that in mind, the imperatives that we've set for the organization are membership growth, unlocking the value of our assets, and building the Scouting brand. First, on membership growth, this is central. If we believe in the mission, we should all want more youth in Scouting in Canada. Our communities need ethical leadership. Families want healthy outdoor adventures for their children. We all care about environmental stewardship. In short, Canada needs more Scouts. But if you look at our annual report and look at the numbers of youth involved in our organization, you'll see that we did not grow this year. In fact, we took quite a step backwards, despite growing the previous year. The overall trend of the decades is downwards, and in recent months, the loss of one of our key partners has not helped. So membership growth is absolutely key, the #1 strategic objective for our organization and the key focus for the board. And that comes down to the Scouting experience, focusing on the Canadian path, focusing on the 5 priorities, encouraging new Scouters, and then investing and supporting new programs as well. And I thought it was great yesterday to hear about the new group commissioner training program, which was covered off in one of the sessions and which will be profiled after the AGM. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, I'd strongly encourage you to do so. But we're very excited about how that will help growth. Secondly, we feel we need to unlock the value of our assets. And this is about property. Scouts Canada owns over 600 properties. This is a massive portfolio that includes crown jewels, amazing locations that enable us to provide those outdoor adventures that are really at the heart of Scouting. Campsites, adventure courses, the places that we know and love. But it also includes a huge number of locations that just aren't being used or which don't meet the high standards that we've set for our organization. And I think we heard in one of the sessions yesterday, only about 200 of those locations are being properly or utilized at all. Others incur massive costs, require unrealistic investment, or come with environmental and regulatory liabilities that we obviously have to meet. So our position on properties is clear and hasn't changed. We need access to properties to further our mission. That hasn't changed. But we need to think more and more carefully around properties. And access to properties doesn't mean we should continue to own all 600. It means we need to look at the portfolio and figure, where do we invest? How do we build properties that we would be proud to have parents deliver their children to, and which can enable the type of adventures and the type of experiences that are really at the heart of Scouting. It also means looking hard at the portfolio and understanding if there are locations that we shouldn't continue to keep within the portfolio. So to do that, we need help. That's why we've looked for a new board member who comes with specific asset management experience, and it's why we're looking outside the organization to get some solid input on how we can best think about this. And if we do it properly, Scouts Canada will continue to deliver those great experiences and those great adventures that are at the heart of what we do. And we'll be able to invest ever more strategically in programs and new services. And then the third piece that the board has identified is building the Scouting brand. Our volunteers, our members, and our staff all know the value of Scouting and the impact we have on the lives of youth. But we traditionally haven't done a great job of communicating those values to parents or prospective parents. And as we heard in the session before lunch today, necessarily around understanding the values that parents or prospective parents truly hold dear. So I think there will be much more focus, and we're excited for much more focus on the brand question, which isn't about marketing or glossy advertising, but around giving us the language and the tools to interact with Canadians and help drive membership growth. So with that, I'll pause, and I'll ask someone to move acceptance of the report from the Board of Governors. Agreed, thank you. And can I have someone to second that, please? Sandy, thank you. And I'll call the motion to accept the report from the Board of Governors. Good. Thank you. Declare the motion carried. Thank you, everybody. The next item on our agenda is the report from our National Key 3. So I'll hand it over to John, Caitlin, and Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No microphone for you? No, keep the shot. The on button is to there we go.
Hey,
all
we
right.
got it to work.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Pleased to be with you today and share some of the accomplishments of the last year. Firstly, want to talk a little bit about program quality. So we know that we've been working very hard over the last number of years to not only design, but also start to implement the 4 elements of the Canadian Path in as many sections as possible. Certainly this past year saw more sections complete the quarterly assessments and really start to demonstrate that they are becoming more youth-led, using plan to review, spices, and getting outdoors the way we would like.
So this year, as most of you know, we've done a major revitalization of our youth leadership training. I'm really pleased with how it's come about. So we took our Focus, Flex, and Fast programs, and we decided that there were useful elements in them, but they really needed to be Canadian pathized, if that's a word. And so we've taken it, and I think for me, the most exciting thing that we did was that we added beavers and rovers. So now our young people from ages 5 to 26 can all have access to this training. And the second most important thing that we did is that we understood that when it was delivered at a council level, we are a very large country. And so we knew that not everyone was having access to this training. So we've developed it in a format where young people right down to the section level, anyone can access this, and we really hope that this is going to set us up where we are training thousands of youth across this country with the leadership skills. So it's super exciting. Check out the trade show later.
So the next thing that I want to talk about is the voice of Scouts Canada. I remember when my son was one of the first batch of our youth spokespeople, and it's amazing how much progress we've made since then. They were trained to be in front of a camera, to be on the radio, to write articles, to be the real face of scouting out in the public. And I'm happy to report that nowadays we have 45 of those young spokespeople. They're very much well trained to be in front of a camera, and they speak like a pro. And we also have about 250 youth spokespeople, and we're talking about from beavers to cubs, the younger ones, as opposed to the scouters, the venturers, and the rovers. We also have lots of articles that you have seen probably on the Scouting Life. Those are contributed by our YSPs, and they're telling us stories about what they do on a day-to-day basis. But beyond that, we actually have the external reach at the same time. So we have articles on like-minded organizations like the Conservancy of Canada. And then we also have the CAA, where we posted some of the experiences and showing the expertise that we have as an organization. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is also how we support our scouters. And time again, we're listening to scouters to figure out a way to better support them. And one of the key messages that we heard, and you probably heard it in some of the presentations the last few days as well, was helping the group commissioners. So we have an online one, online Wood Badge one right now for group commissioners, and then we're also going to have the orientation in person. We're running that as a pilot. We also have updated the scouting fundamentals, so we reduced the material so that we're focusing on the core, on what they need to do to be active on the floor as soon as possible. We also streamlined the Wood Badge 1, and we took out some modules that are repetitive, again, focusing on what's necessary to get them up and running and helping with the sections and having the best value for the time that they put in on those online training.
We've also continued our work in pursuit of making Scouting not only a safe place to come and participate in our programs, but also equipping our volunteers and our youth with skills and knowledge that they can take on their path in life, whatever that may be. Certainly, I don't know if everybody has had an opportunity to see some of the positive media attention lately around the RESPECT training and the impact that that's been having in our global community, our national community, in terms of helping prevent bad behaviors. For those of you who've taken the training, which will be everybody, you'll know what bad behaviors are, but preventing bad behaviors from happening and empowering the bystander.
So you also know the amount of work that we've done with the BPNP. They used to be jumbled up together with the policies and the procedures. As we know, the board is responsible for giving us the policies, and then we execute the procedures on the other end. So the real good news about the BPNP is the amount of engagement that we've had. I remember being on one of the calls where a regular scouter, just like any one of us here, who just happened to specialize in accounting, and he provided real insights on how we should be formatting our policies and procedures related to that particular expertise. We have so much engagement in terms of the online survey, so more than 1,700 individual scouters actually chimed in, and we listened to what they have to say so that we could incorporate them into the changes.
Can't see the screen, and there's a number on it. Sorry. So this year, same as the year before, we really recommitted to our No One Left Behind program. So we increased our No One Left Behind funding for this year, so 2018-19, to $523,000. Last year, our No One Left Behind program helped 16,900 youth take part in great, safe scouting adventures. That's a big number. That's a lot of young Canadians across this country who might not have had a chance to access scouting, which is an experience a lot of them will really benefit them in the future. So that's amazing. And I think that the other thing that is worth mentioning here is that this year and last year, we've increased the financial support for purchasing outdoor gear and funding programs. So youth and parents can apply for additional funds so that once they're in the program, they have the supplies and the gear to attend camps and actively partake in the program.
That's good. It's still you. Don't run away.
Oh, okay. Scout Popcorn. Scout Popcorn was a massive success last year. We have been rebuilding the popcorn program for a number of years, and I think last year we really saw sustainable growth in the program. So we had a 9% increase over 2016 and raised over $6.5 million. That is $6.5 million that contributed to more scouts having great, safe scouting adventures. I think, when you really think about it, you look at 210th Mackenzie Group, and even the next one, $70,000. Can you imagine what you can do with $70,000? Can you imagine the places these young people are going? And I hope that more groups will continue to raise popcorn money and partake in the popcorn program, because when you see numbers like that, you just have to wonder and just imagine the amazing adventures they're having.
Perfect. Good transition into the Scout Shop. So we continue to work to bring, again, the gear, the equipment, what people need to get out and have the right types of scouting adventures. You'll see some of the numbers here over the last year. Most of you in the room have physically seen, probably played with the Mackenzie 4 tent, which is a product that we designed with Eureka specifically for scouting use. We continue to get really great feedback as well as sales on that product, as well as feedback on other products that our scouts would like to see. Check out some of the reviews on Scouting Life if you haven't already. And certainly, of course, each and every dollar that's raised through the Scout Shop comes back to support all the other great initiatives that we're taking as an organization.
We just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. And I think this thank you is so much bigger than this room, and it's a thank you to the volunteers across this country, because every volunteer is putting hundreds of hours potentially in a year to make sure that youth across the country have that great, safe scouting experience. So we just wanted to take the opportunities to say thank you. I think I, and maybe John, would like to say thank you to everyone, particularly those in this room, but across the country. It's been an incredible 3 years. We've got a few more minutes before we are officially done. But yeah, I would be amiss if I didn't say a huge thank you to the people who have contributed to my professional development and my experience over the last 3 years. I would not be where I am without it, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to look at the math, you know, we have 20 councils, so that means 20 or 19 council commissioners and 19 council youth commissioners. And if you divide it over 3 years, you're looking at replacing 6 or 7 of them, so that's like 14 or 15 every single year. We're happy to say that we're going to hand over an organization to Tim and Annabelle, where you have pretty much a full complement of that. You know, and those that are still there, we are working on the successors. So the succession planning is in there, the onboarding place is in there, both on the council youth commissioner and the council commissioners. And just same thing with the staff. You have a full complement of very, very capable staff who's supporting us and making us this work. And I'm so happy to say that you know, we're in a better place, and I'm sure Tim and Annabelle and Andrew will take it to a higher place after us. And we could have not done it without you, and I'm not gonna cry. There's no onion in front of me. But you know, thank you for everything that you're doing. I know, and I hate to say this, but some people might think that when you wake up and say, "Who can I piss off today?" But I know, I know that that's not how you think. I know that you are all here waking up every single morning and thinking, what can I do to make the job of a section scouter better? What can I do to make the job of a group commissioner better? What can I do to make the job of the area team better? And we need to communicate that loud and clear to the people who entrusted that into the roles that we have. And you know, thank you to the section scouters, thank you to the group scouters, and to those of you that are here. You know, the Council Key 3 and the Deputy National Commissioners and our staff. It's an awesome 3 years. It went by so fast, and a lot of fun.
Thanks, John. You can go sit down now, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to put forward a motion that the report of the National Key 3 be accepted. Can I have someone to move the motion, please? Thank you, Dean. And someone to second, please?
Dave Williams, Shining Waters.
Dave, thank you. I'll call the motion, please, so if you can grab your devices and vote. Okay. Unanimous. Excellent. Motion carried. 100%. Very good. Thank you, everybody. I'll now invite Doug Reed up to deliver the report of the nominating committee.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. It gives me great pleasure to fill in for our chair of the nominating committee, Mr. Stephen Kent, who wasn't able to join us today. As Rich said earlier, we had a task given to us by the board to look at some areas that we thought we would need to fulfill roles on the board that were going to help with our strategic plan in the organization. And Rich mentioned a couple of these things. The process for us started back in the spring with nominations and interviews for the National Youth Commissioner and National Commissioner. And right through to the end of August, beginning of September with interviews for board members. There was a great deal of people who had applied this year, as in past years, and we had some really great candidates to fulfill these very important roles. So we're very excited about that. So it was a good work on behalf of the team, and we want to thank all those who had put forward their names to serve in some very important roles of the organization. I would like to move the approval of the following by the voting members of the nominating committee's recommendation for Richard Thomas of Toronto, Ontario as chair of the board, Adam Benson of Toronto, Ontario as vice chair of the board strategic, Carrie Onken of Mission, BC as vice chair finance, Tim Welsh of Ottawa, Ontario as national commissioner, and Annabelle Loader of Ottawa as National Youth Commissioner.
Thank you, Doug. Can I have someone to second the motion, please? Mike, thank you. I'll call the motion, and please vote.
Sorry, I forgot my chummy.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I declare the motion carried. Doug?
Thank you. I would like to move the approval by the voting members of the nominating committee's recommendation of Mark Jocelyn as the honorary legal counsel, Andrew Price as executive commissioner and CEO, and Stephen Kent of Mount Pearl, Newfoundland as past chair of the board to be officers of the Scouts Canada Corporation.
Thank you, Doug. May I have someone to second the motion? Jeff, thank you very much. I'll call the motion. Thank you. Declare the motion carried.
Consistent with Partners for Canadian Scouting Agreement signed by Scouts Canada on September 21st, 2012, I would like to move the approval by the voting members of the nominating committee's recommendation of Jean-François Champagne as a representative of l'Association de Scouts de Canada on Scouts Canada Board of Governors.
Thank you, Doug. May I have a seconder for that motion, please? Thank you, Ian. I'll call the motion. Thank you. Motion carried. Doug.
I would like to move the approval by the voting members of the Nominating Committee's recommendation for election as members of the Board of Governors. Andrew Obey, Oakville, Ontario. Audrey Wubenhorst, Toronto, Ontario. Brenda Sweeney, Oakville, Ontario. Brigitte Schuler, East St. Paul, Manitoba. Carly Tiller, St. Thomas, Ontario. Fasila Sharif of Calgary, Alberta. Kathleen Provo of Antigonish, Nova Scotia. And Robert Craddock of Calgary, Alberta.
Thank you, Doug. Can I have someone to second the motion? Kenny, thank you. Call the motion, please. Excellent, thank you. Declare the motion carried.
I move the approval of the voting members to the Nominating Committee's recommendation respecting the election of the 6 honorary officers with voting rights and the 127 honorary members non-voting of the Scouts Canada Corporation.
Thank you, Doug. Can I have a seconder for a motion, please? Ian? Thank you, Ian. I'll call the motion. Thank you. Motion carried. Doug, thank you very much. And a big thank you, Doug, to you, to Steve, to Evelyn and Spencer for all the work that went into the nominating committee over those many months. It was very good. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is for selection of voting members to serve on the nominating committee for the New Scout year. The way this works is that we are looking for 3 voting members to sit on the nominating committee, one of which, a minimum of one of which, must be a youth member of Scouts Canada. And the way this works is a voting member can nominate another person who must agree to serve, and we'll then go through an election process to determine the 3 people. So I'll come down to the floor and ask if anybody has any nominations for the nominating committee. What's that? Caitlin, thank you. Caitlin, do you agree to serve if nominated? Thank you. Caitlin, thank you. Do I have any other nominations? Robert? Thank you. Doug, do you agree to serve if nominated? I do. Thank you. I'd like to nominate Ian Moore. Thank you. Ian, if elected, do you agree to serve? I do. Thank you. Spencer Julian. Spencer is currently out of the country. He has agreed. Perfect. Thank you, Spencer Julian. Do I have any other names to go on the nominating committee? So I believe we meet our youth threshold. So what will happen now is we'll put a slide up with the names that were just put forward. And then we'll have, given we have 4 names for the 3 positions, we will use the devices to vote. The way this should work is we'll use the numbers, and you can vote for up to 3 choices. So if you just give us a moment. We'll just be 1 second. Excellent, thank you. So the names are up on the screen. And I will now invite you to use your devices to vote for the voting members to serve on the nominating committee for the coming Scout year. Please select up to three of the four candidates. And then do press OK after you've entered your three choices.
Wasn't me, but it is funny. Special delivery.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody. The results of the election are elected to the nominating committee are Caitlin, Doug, and Ian. Congratulations, and thank you. Next item on the agenda is motions presented on behalf of the board. Motions presented by members on behalf of the board. There are none this year, so we'll move to adoption of the auditor's report and financial statements, and I'll invite Abby Ma back to the stage.
Thank you. So I move that the auditor's report for the Scouts Canada National Operation dated November 7th, 2018 be accepted, and that the financial statements of the National Operation of Scouts Canada for the year ending August 31st, 2018 be accepted.
Great. Thank you, Abby. May I have a seconder for the motion, please? Thank you, Robin. Call the motion. Motion carried. Thank you. Next, Abby, the appointment of auditors, please.
Thank you. I would like to move that the firm of Kelly, Hubers, and McNeely be appointed as auditors for the national operation for the year ending August 31st, 2019.
Thank you, Abby. Can I have a seconder, please, for the motion?
Carrie Benson, Northern Lights Council.
Okay, thank you. Call the motion. Thank you. I declare the motion carried. And the annual report, please.
Thank you. I move that the annual report of the National Operation of Scouts Canada for the year ending August 31st, 2018 be adopted.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for a motion, please? Grant, thank you. Call the motion. And declare the motion carried. Thank you. And Abby, thank you. Next on the agenda, I'd like to invite to the stage Jane Johnston, Deputy National Commissioner, for the tribute to the volunteers.
I've been given the distinct honor to pay tribute to our volunteers, those dedicated people who believe in all work and no play. They are our unsung heroes who share their time, talent, and energy to inspire and help young people become confident, contributing citizens of Canada. I ask that we take this occasion to recognize and thank them for their contributions to Scouts Canada.
Jane, thank you. And do you move? Oh, excuse me. Caitlin, thank you for moving. And I have a seconder in Adam Benson, who is online. Can I call the motion? Motion carried. Thank you. And thank you, Jane. The next item on our agenda, 16, is appreciation to sponsors and partners in serving Canadian youth. And I'd like to invite Brigitte Schuler to the board, to the stage, please. Brigitte is on the Board of Governors.
I'd like to move that on behalf of Scouts Canada, we extend our sincere and grateful appreciation to all of our sponsors and partners across this great nation who support and dedicate themselves to aiding us to fulfill the mission towards Canadian youth.
Rita, thank you. And can I have someone to second that motion, please? John Estrella, thank you. Call the motion. Excellent, and motion carried. Thank you, Brigitte. Moving to other business, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Mark Shalui from Scout Canada.
Thank you. Caitlin, please don't let Sylvain play with the voting thingies while I'm up here. Okay. Yeah, thanks. See you. Greetings from l'Association des Scouts du Canada. As always, I'll start by thanking Scouts Canada, Richard Thomas, and Andrew Price for the invitation to the AGM. This is the 5th year running that I'm invited to this event. In past years, I have been present either by myself or with our Chief Commissioner, Sylvain Fredette. This year, you'll notice that a few have tagged along to that +1. It's at this time last year that we first discussed with Chris, Andrew, and others to hold a joint meeting between our two associations. I've had the privilege to work with Scouts Canada on many projects, both at the national and international level. I've had the chance to meet many of you and be witness to our similarities, our common goals, and our common problems. What was initially a surprise during my first year became normal, usual later on. Our differences were, for the most part, imagined. Today, both sides of our organizations have an opportunity to see what I've seen, to meet, speak, and exchange, to realize that whatever line we once thought separated us is in fact more of an abstraction than a barrier. One of our common objectives is youth empowerment. Scouts Canada worked on a model to give a fair share of the control of their organization to their youth. I'm happy to say that for the past 5 years, we set ourselves on the same trajectory. Philippe Dufour, here with us today, our first youth board member and now youth commissioner, has been doing an incredible job to build our youth network. We intend to keep on that path. Our intentions are ambitious. By 2020, we aim to give our youth members a distinct vote at our General Assembly. Give them a voice to express themselves and to help steer the organization they call their own. Next week, we'll be in Panama, where a united Canada will present the sole constitution change of the conference. Its goal? Give youth advisors voting power on the regional committee, an equivalent to the Board of Governors of the Inter-American region. We will be making a clear statement to establish Canada as a regional leader in youth empowerment, to show that we not only speak with words, but with actions. Now, don't get me wrong, we know there's still a lot of work to be done here at home, but it's certainly time we share what we have learned so far and help others get up to speed. On this final note, I'll take the opportunity to thank John and Caitlin for their service to Canadian Scouting. It was a true pleasure working by your side. I'd also like to welcome Annabelle and Tim and congratulate you for your nomination. In the name of l'Association des Scouts du Canada and myself, I want to thank Scouts Canada again for the invitation to your AGM. I wish you all a great conclusion to the event, and as always, hope to see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'd also like to invite up to the stage Michael Burke, who is the National Guild Master from the Canadian Fellowship of BP Guilds.
Like high school, I sat in the back and then I used to get called. Thank you. I bring you greetings from the Canadian Fellowship of Baden-Powell Guilds. Our aim continues to be supporting the Scouting movement, and we do that in several ways. We have a scholarship plan that we fund, and we offer 2 scholarships to well-deserving Scouters, or Scouting people throughout the country. One in the East and one in the West this year. One was from the East Coast in New Brunswick, and the other was out on the West Coast in Vancouver. These things are funded by our stamp bank. The 15th Baden-Powell Guild in Parksville, BC, collects all our old used stamps and sells them off to stamp traders and raises money so that we can supply the money for the scholarship funds. We also have been having a very good year in that our numbers have grown, and we've just effectively opened up 2 new guilds, one in Chilliwack, BC, and we're opening a 2nd guild now in Newfoundland. Newfoundland, I'll get corrected. I knew see? I knew I'd get corrected. I knew I'd get corrected. I got corrected when I visited there, too. I thought they were going to throw me off the bus, never mind under it. I was out at Cape Spear when they did it. Yes, it was. We also are very active in our camps. We have a number of our guilds that are active within the camps, and we support the Scouting movement by being in the background. And in several places, we are actively working with the jamborees in the background. You can see us, so you can continue to have a good time. Thank you very much for inviting me today, and continued good luck Scouting.
Michael, thank you. We come now to the final substantive motion of the meeting, and probably the longest as well, which is the confirmation of acts. And I'll ask us to put the wording on the screen, please. This motion states, be it resolved that all acts, bylaws, proceedings, appointments, elections, and payments enacted, made, done, and taken by the Board of Governors and the National Leadership Team members since the last annual meeting of the Corporation, referred to in the minutes of these bodies, of the AGM, or of the annual report, or in any way connected with the day-to-day business of the Corporation, are hereby approved and confirmed. Could I have somebody please to move the motion? Jake, thank you. Can I have someone to second the motion, please? Kerry, thank you. Kerry. Thank you. I'll call the motion. Excellent. Motion carried. Thank you. This brings us towards the close of our annual general meeting. But I will ask everybody to stay in their seats, and for those watching at home, not to dash away. We have a couple of other items once we formally close and adjourn the annual general meeting, but I'll ask everyone to stay for, and you will see why that is so very important to do so. But first, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin. In line with precedence, we do not need a seconder, so I will call the motion to adjourn, please. You can vote B to keep Caitlin around if you.
Nobody's allowed to vote no.
I'm voting B just for badness.
Oh. Caitlin.
It's okay, I'm still officially done.
Thank you, everybody. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your participation throughout. So as I say, I'd like everyone to stay because we do have because we do have a phone call, and we do have a couple of special announcements.
There's a song for that.
Announcements. Andrew, take it away.
I wasn't going to feed into it. We can practice later. It's both a sad but happy moment to be able to pause and say thank you to a couple of tremendous scouters. I'm going to try to hold it all together as I read a couple of citations and share a few stories about my friends Caitlin and John. I'm going to start with Caitlin and share a few thoughts, and then I'm going to ask Rich to share a few thoughts. I'm going to start with what other people have to say about Caitlin. The first from Chris von Roritz. Chris says, I have had the privilege of working with several National Youth Commissioners over the years, each of whom has brought his or her own flair, energy, and mark. And Caitlin is no exception to this. Caitlin is vocal about her passions and ideas and does not hesitate to speak up on behalf of the National Service Team. And while Caitlin is the chair of the National Youth Network, she has owned the role of a member of the National Key 3 far beyond being the Youth Commissioner. He has that in quotes because you can't see that. Caitlin is an active and contributing member of the three-person team, and I have never gotten the sense that she is the youth voice. That's absolutely true. But rather a competent and capable voice who happens to be much younger than most people realize. Caitlin's reflection on her impact and willingness to help direct progress on projects such as inclusion within Scouting have also not gone unnoticed, and Scouts Canada is fortunate to have had her as a most senior voice. From Keegan Eatman. Caitlin is a compassionate and dedicated scouter. Over the past 3 years, her commitment and dedication to our movement has only grown. She has led our organization at a transformative time for youth involvement and done so by collaborating and engaging with young people across the country. Caitlin has also represented Scouts Canada and our country's values in international scouting in a manner that our members would be so proud of. She has shown many countries the value of having actively engaged youth members as part of their governance structure. From Commissioner Loney, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Do you like that? Yeah, exactly. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with your ANIC team. I know it was a gamble to take a section scouter from Nova Scotia who was fed up with the way things were and to allow him the opportunity to work at the national level. This was an enjoyable and challenging experience, and I feel that our team made a difference for youth in Scouts Canada. Thank you for being a great representative for Scouts Canada on the world stage. You showed that our organization is more than old men in red, sometimes tan shirts. With your leadership, our team showed that we have a vibrant and exciting present and future. Thank you for working so hard to ensure youth got the recognition they rightfully deserve for their efforts by pushing commendations for kids. This broke down one of the last, if not the last, adults-only space in the organization. Thank you, Caitlin. Rich?
Thank you. To add to that, Caitlin, on behalf of the board, I'm delighted to also say a huge thank you and recognize everything you've done, not just in your role as National Youth Commissioner, but far, far beyond that. We talk a great deal in Scouting. Mark mentioned it as well, about youth leadership. And it's frankly hard to imagine a person who better embodies that concept than you do. As our National Youth Commissioner, you've excelled, I think, at everything that you've undertaken, from sitting at the board table, from helping guide and lead that group, to helping manage the national organization, to representing Scouting at every function or ceremony imaginable, to being the best role model I think we could ever hope for young people. And I think you are going to be much, much missed as we think about our mission. And if our mission is to develop well-rounded youth, better prepared for success in the world, you give us a huge amount of confidence that we're on the right track. Thank you.
So, I've got a couple words. Yeah, you're going to have to listen to a few more words. It's hard to believe. I think that Caitlin and I first met back in 2011 or 2012 at a commissioner's course in BC Yukon. And I remember I'd never met her before. I had only heard great things from her friend Linda Rainbow, who said, "You're going to love working with Caitlin." And it's been absolutely the God's honest truth. We've had a tremendous ride over the last 3 years. We've said lots of great things already about the international stuff we've done, and Caitlin truly has done a tremendous job, not only within the region, but globally, in terms of positioning youth engagement and the real importance of modeling that youth-led aspect throughout every single NSO on the face of the planet. She has indeed been a full-fledged member of the National Key 3, and I enjoyed hucking potatoes and toilet paper and maple syrup with Caitlin and John at CJ 17. Caitlin, on behalf of the organization, it gives me great pleasure to invite you forward to be recognized with the bar to the Silver Acorn.
Can we take pictures after when I'm not crying?
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
You can take pictures later when I'm not crying.
Can you sit close by?
Yeah.
All right. Scouter John. Yeah. I'm going to read a few things after, but I was reading through some of these citations, and it's amazing to see how dependable and perhaps predictable individuals are. Because as I read through all these commendations, I was like, this is John to a T. John is a guy who, has his hand up almost as fast as Caitlin. He's the first person to want to jump in and make sure things go right. He is absolutely 100% dedicated to the Scouters, the staff, the youth in this movement. And it has been my tremendous pleasure to work with John over the last 3 years on our National Key 3. I'm going to share a few thoughts from others who are either not here or who are here, but who want to sort of perhaps remain nameless, but I'm not going to let them because I'm going to tell you who said what. The first from Chris von Roritz, who is here. He's right there, John, in case you're wondering. Yeah, I don't know what to expect. Chris says, John Estrella is highly deserving of recognition and thanks for his continued contributions to Scouting. I first met John several years ago as we were both members of the Board of Governors. During that time, I admired John for his logical, strategic approach to helping strengthen Canadian Scouting. Over the last 3 years, I've had the pleasure of working once again with John during his term as the National Commissioner. I've witnessed firsthand the tremendous amount of time and energy he has invested in Canadian Scouting, and I really do believe that John sees this as an investment. He has often spoken of what Scouting gave him as a youth and what he has seen it bring to his own children's lives. I have no doubt that the advances we have made in the past 3 years under John's leadership have helped position us to be an organization with a greater capacity for offering great, safe Scouting adventures to young people from one side of Canada to the other. Above all else, if I chose one word to try to summarize John, it would probably be enthusiastic. Agree. John is capable of getting a whole room excited. He can speak with tremendous sincerity, and he is always ready for fun. From Craig Rendell in White Pine Council, great Scouting events just don't happen. They are created by Scouters like yourself who devote your time, knowledge, and enthusiasm to them. It is because of your leadership and volunteer support that fellow Scouters, new or experienced, create a safe and positive environment, an environment which allows adult and youth Scouters to learn and grow, in turn creating quality programming. From Mike Chalubko, John remains good at keeping focused on the big picture while allowing his team to dig into the details, but we all know that he'll dig into them if required. Yes, I've also seen that. The sign of a good manager: trust but never be afraid to verify. And within his style, he allowed his team to comment on things like structures and reporting trees and methodologies, things other styles of managers wouldn't allow. I appreciate the trust placed in me and the opportunity that John Estrella has provided, not only to Scouts Canada, but to me as well. From Scouter Steve Kent, John Estrella is one of the most talented Scouters that I have had the pleasure of working with. I first met John when he was Deputy Area Commissioner running special events in Shining Waters Council. He quickly accepted the challenge to take on further responsibilities in order to help Scouting on a national level. As the Deputy Head of Contingent for Canada for the World Scout Jamboree in 2015, John provided enthusiastic and effective leadership. On a personal level, as Head of Contingent, he was a tremendous source of strength and support to me during one of the most challenging periods of my career. He stepped up and supported our team in whatever way he could. As National Commissioner, John Estrella has exceeded expectations. His bold leadership, his work ethic, and focus have helped strengthen Scouting in Canada. He gets things done. He is a collaborative force for positive change. Scouting has been very fortunate to have John's contribution of time and talent over the last decade. His impact will be felt for decades to come. From Jane Johnson, I am not known for my brevity. However, there are a few words I would use to describe John. A family man, a friend, a mentor, generous with his time, understanding, compassionate. Wait, Jane, this is not brevity. Compassionate, patient, caring, dedicated, humble, kind, thoughtful, stick-it-to-itness, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, enthusiastic, positive, sympathetic, polite, impartial, diplomatic, honest, sincere, and giving. Jane, if that's brief, I'm not sure what isn't brief. 3 quotes I often use are Baden-Powell's, "Try to live the world a little better than you found it," Dr. Seuss's, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not," and Helen Keller's, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." John, thank you for leaving Scouts Canada better than you found it. Thank you for caring a whole awful lot, and thank you for being part of the together. Thank you for ending every conversation with, "Is there anything you need from me?" Rich?
Thank you. John, on behalf of the board, when I spoke to so many other people on the board, we talked about what comes to mind, what are the attributes that you embody, and words came up: thoughtful, diplomatic, fair, compassionate, brilliant, insightful. I feel like Jane. Committed. John, you and your family live up to the hashtag Scouts Do Stuff. There's always an activity, a trip, a camp, a ceremony, and you throw your full self your full self into each of them. You've served scouting in multiple countries and in every role imaginable. And you're a volunteer that steps up for whatever the organization asks of you, excelling at every juncture. With your calm demeanor and approach, you've made lifelong friends in scouting all over the world. And we as the board are honored to be part of that group. Thank you.
So, John, so much has already been said by others, but I'd like to echo a few things. John also was very eager to jump behind the wheel of of one of the cube vans at CJ17. He did that with the same fervor, honestly, that I saw him jump into both challenges and opportunities at Scouts Canada. It's been a tremendous ride and opportunity to work with you, John. Really appreciate the support and engagement, enthusiasm, the energy. He really, I've never seen the guy like pause. I don't think he knows what that is. A couple people have mentioned it. I do think it's important, and I've seen how important it is to John to acknowledge that these types of contributions in scouting come certainly with the support and love of family. And I've seen John's family get 100% behind his commitment to scouting and sort of grow along with him and he with them. And I think a couple of them are maybe here today to join in recognizing John with the Silver Wolf.
Yeah, we'll perhaps stick around and do photos in a moment or two.
Look right here.
Oh, just look right.
Perfect.
Good. Oh. Stick around. Stick around. So, thank you, everyone. Please grab a seat. And congratulations, John. There's one other item of business, an appreciation and thanks that we wanted to make. So I'll hand it over to Caitlin for that.
Testing, testing. You can hear me? Awesome. Okay. All right. I'm going to try not to cry again. When I think about Andrew's contributions to scouting, a particular quote comes to mind. It's funny because Jane picked the same one, but the quote goes, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better." It's not. To me, this quote represents Andrew perfectly. Andrew is a man who believes in change and moving forward. He believes in the people he works with, and he has a vision for scouting in which young people across the country have great safe scouting adventures. Andrew's journey in scouting began as a youth, and his adventures have led him to his current role as our CEO and Executive Commissioner of Scouts Canada. Andrew began as a beaver in scouting and has been engaged ever since, including spending summers volunteering at Camp Opamikon. While obtaining higher education and exploring the world, Andrew continued his journey and volunteered in Spain, Scotland, and New Zealand before moving back to Ottawa. Andrew and Brenda also attended a jamboree in New Zealand together, and after backpacking around the country, came home engaged. Andrew continued his scouting journey in Canada in places such as Ottawa, Vancouver, and Calgary, and never hesitated to jump into a new group or section wherever he could. Andrew's cross-country journey has led him to be a Deputy Area Commissioner in Rideau Area and Heritage Trails, a Deputy Council Commissioner in Pacific Coast Council, to run training courses such as Wood Badge 1 and 2, and be a Deputy Camp Chief at the Pacific Jamboree. In 2011, Andrew began his volunteering services at the national level as the Deputy National Commissioner for Volunteer Services. In 2012, he answered the call of leadership again and became the Chief Commissioner and Chair of the Board of Governors. In 2014, Andrew again answered a need of the organization and became our CEO. His wife, Brenda, says that her favorite part of his philosophy is encouraging youth to take on leadership opportunities in the organization that have typically been adult volunteer roles. Andrew has been an incredible advocate for the youth-led movement in Scouts Canada and has ensured that youth are engaged in achieving their goals and building leadership skills right from beavers up to the national service team. Kaylee Desfossé reflected on her time working with Andrew and said that, "I learned from Andrew on a daily basis. The input of young people was never a second thought for Andrew. I never had to fight for my voice to be heard. It was a given for me to be involved in every decision and conversation." Andrew's commitment to the Key 3 model and the way that he led by example has a strong influence on the way that youth are involved in their Key 3s and their respective teams today. Andrew is someone who is not afraid to have a little fun in amongst the serious business meetings. He's been known to paint himself green, hide in the crowd dressed up as Waldo, and never fails to come up with an ironic Halloween costume for the office Halloween party. He has fostered a sense of community among staff at the national office and has ensured that he takes the time to make everyone feel that they are a valued member of the team. It's funny because Andrew also talked about this, but I personally will not forget my time with Andrew and John at CJ 2017 when we delivered 3,000 pounds of potatoes at midnight and counted out individual packets of syrup. We had people remark that they were shocked that the National Key 3 would spend their time at almost midnight delivering potatoes, but I believe this is another testament to Andrew's character. He's never afraid to get his hands dirty and jump in to help others. He never believes that it is someone else's job to do something when it's all hands on deck to solve a problem. He also ensures that people get an opportunity to achieve their dreams, such as allowing John to drive the cube van. No matter how terrifying it was for the two of us. I would not do that week over again, just so we're all on the same page. Andrew has led this organization through many changes over the last number of years with a steady and stable hand at the helm. We have more consistent, higher quality online training, a strengthened Scouter recognition system, and 20,000 Scouters trained in respect training. Andrew has fostered a safety culture where we believe safety is not a checklist, but instead a lens to view Scouting activities through. Under his direction, we have implemented the Canadian Path, have moved to a consolidated One Scouts business model, which has been incredibly successful. Andrew has also ensured that the organization is focused on the strategic plan, and the National Service Team understands the importance of business planning and sticking to our plan. And I'm sure there's other things, and I know there's other things he's contributed that's, it's just a short list. Steve Kent says that Andrew has devoted much of his life to Scouting. For the last decade in particular, Scouts Canada has benefited greatly from his devotion. He is very much deserving of Scouts Canada's highest honor. He is one of the finest Scouters that I have ever had the privilege of working with, and I feel that most of us in the room would say the same. Andrew's direction-changing contributions to this organization will make a difference today and for years to come. He is devoted, compassionate, empathetic, encouraging, passionate, and as Kaylee said, he has a unique way of combining his mind for business with his Scouting heart. For these reasons and more, and for his service of the most exceptional character to Scouting, we would like to present Andrew with the Silver Wolf.
Go. I'll just echo some of those remarks on behalf of the board and note how we see how Andrew has dedicated himself to Scouting for so many years, and at every level of our organization, from volunteering at the local section level through to running groups, to the national level, to the board, and now is our trusted and respected CEO. He has improved scouting at every stage, and his mark on our organization is unmistakable. He strives every day to make the right choice for all of our members, youth, adult, volunteers, and staff. And I speak for all board members when I say that we're proud to have served him alongside him, and that we've each learned from his style, passion, and commitment. Baden-Powell is credited with having said, "There's no teaching to compare with example." And I think Andrew is the living example and embodiment of an amazing Scouter who thoroughly deserves this award. Thank you. Take a minute. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we'll take a short break, and then we are reconvening somewhere else. Thank you. And that is where we will go. Thank you very much.